Yacht Talk podcast. Today we are at Marina Palms Marina in Aventura, Florida with Jim Bronstien, the owner of Marine Business Advisors. How are you, Jim?
I'm doing great today, thank you.
Great. So this is a beautiful marina. Is it only for residents, the docking here at Marina
This
Palms?
marina, the slips are owned by residents who live here. Some of them are then rented out to other individuals.
Okay.
So it's a combination of slip owners and slip renters.
Okay, interesting.
It's a little different model than a typical marina.
Yeah, so the owners themselves rent them out to particulars?
No,
or
we
does the
manage
office
we
own?
manage that process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Otherwise it gets very chaotic if everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is open for new yachts if someone would be interested in having their yachts moored here?
It's a little complicated because there are certain restrictions on how many boats can come in that are not part of the ownership of slip rental. This is a very complicated model,
Okay.
unlike a typical marina.
Okay.
So the answer is they would call us and then they would tell us if they're interested, and then we would see if we can accommodate them.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we're quite full and it's beautiful and we have great customers.
Yeah. So anyways, the subject of this interview is not Marina Palms Marina.
Right.
But we're gonna talk about all that Jim Bronstien has done in the marine industry and his experience as a marine business advisor. So, if you would like, Jim, to start off just telling us your background, how did you get into the marine industry, and where have you worked, what different kinds of positions have you held?
So I got into the marine industry about 30 years ago. I had hair then and everything, and originally owned a company called Spencer Boat Company in West Palm Beach that then merged with our next door neighbor, which was called Rybovich, which most people know that name, and then we ended up making it all one company, which I owned, which was Rybovich. And so I had that company for about 20 years. We built it up from a boat yard up in the West Palm Beach area that some people knew about, but not as well known. And then built it up to a pretty substantial company. And then I sold that company to the Huizingas, Wayne Huizinga's family,
Yes.
about 12 years ago. And they took it to another level, which most people know Rybovich now on an international scale. And while we had a great reputation, they have taken it far beyond what we did. So they've done very well. So then after I sold Rybovich, I ran Broward Yacht for a couple of years in Fort Lauderdale. And then I got involved with a lot of other marina and boat yard projects all over the place. I was a partner in a marina development in Costa Rica called Marina Pez Vela, which is a very well-known marina complex down in Capos, Costa Rica. I'm an active owner with a company called Saunders Yacht Works, which is a boat yard in the Gulf Coast of Alabama. And it's really a premier yard catering primarily to the higher end sport fish boats. And so I'm active with that. And then I do a lot of advisory work with marinas and boat yards all over the place, from Alaska to all over the place, and in the Northeast. And then now I've got a partner and we do some marina management as well. So third party marina management is something I'm doing a lot of now. So we have Marina Palms, we have the Hilton Marine in Fort Lauderdale, we call 17th Street Yacht Basin. We're about to do one starting this summer in Panama. So I'm all over the place.
Wow,
That's good. So I
very
never
impressive.
stop.
Yes. No, congratulations. That's very
Busy.
cool. I don't meet people every day that have all that broad experience in the marine industry.
It's good. I've been just active with it, and I've enjoyed it. I've just found different things, and the boat yard world is one that I've been in a long time, and so it's kind of a niche. Not as many people are into that as it may appear. And the marina, just the combination of marina management and boat yard operations is interesting, and it keeps you active in all sorts of different ways. So it's sort of fun.
Nice. And the people you meet must be interesting, right?
It's very interesting.
Yes. Okay, so let's start with our questions. Jim, do you think the marine industry is a profitable business to be in?
I do, or I probably would not have been in it for this long.
Yes.
It is. It's interesting, though. I mean, I learned way back when. So we got into the boatyard business as a business, and it's very easy when you look at all this and the boats and the water. It's easy to get sort of caught up into the lure of boating, and so I have seen wealthy boat owners who believe that they want to buy into the boat business because it must be a great business, and it is, but you've got to really run it like a business, and you can't get too caught up in the lure of it, and you'll lose focus, if that makes sense. So it's like people who say, well, I eat in a lot of restaurants, so therefore I'm an expert in restaurants, so let's go buy a restaurant because I'm sure I know more than somebody else. So people say, well, I'm a boater and I go to marinas and boatyards, so I must know a lot about boats, so let's go buy a business. Those are the ones that have a hard time with it. But the ones who approach it like a real business, it can work, right? Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and has the marine industry expanded in the last few years? And do you think it will keep growing?
So the industry has changed a lot in the years I've been in it. In the last few years, it's grown a lot. It's very dependent on the economy. It's a discretionary, nobody needs a boat. It's sort of rule number one.
Yes.
They want a boat. And so, but the industry has changed. There's been more consolidation. There's been a lot of outside investment capital and private equity money that's come into our industry, which never occurred. There was nobody in the outside sort of financial markets that took any interest in our industry at all. We were considered a risky, strange, hard to put your finger on it sort of industry, and that's changed a lot. So now a lot of private equity is out there buying into the industry in certain niches, marinas in particular. So yeah, and that'll probably continue on as this industry. It's high barrier to entry in this industry, particularly marinas. So you can't just build a marina wherever you want at all. And so a lot of the sort of world is figuring out that makes it a good business, because if you have a marina, you're probably not going to have a competitive marina show up right next door, because they couldn't if they wanted to. So once you have one and you manage it right, it can be a great business. So there's some consolidation going on, a fair bit of it actually.
Interesting. So there's a lot of rules and regulations and codes to build a marina?
Yeah, I mean that's the downside. It's very, very difficult to get, well, good side or bad side. If you have a marina,
good for you.
Good, right? If you want to expand your marina or change it or build one, very, very time consuming, and regulatory permits, the physical location, just because there's a piece of water, maybe it's not deep enough, maybe you can't get at it, maybe the land up above it is not conducive for a marina in front. There was just an article about a marina in Northern California that came online 20 years after they began the process. 20 years. So there are not a lot of people with that kind of patience or desire, or money, or
Yeah.
So that's a lot about the marina side. The boatyard side is similar in that respect, and then there's the whole other side, which is just boat manufacturing, from production manufacturing to custom yacht manufacturing. So there's lots of segments within the industry, and they all have their nuance in terms of, so custom boat building is also something, nobody's really starting that today. They're sort of taking what's out there and building off of it. Production builders are consolidating. But overall, really the industry's pretty strong right now, and so far so good. And then there are issues with the international trade and tariffs, and whether the U.S. market share versus European market shares. There's a whole international bit of a shell game, which is a better market to be in, depending on what you do and where you're at. So.
And I've heard U.S. yachts cannot travel to to Europe? The
So
details
there,
about this.
right now, there are some retaliatory tariffs going on. So if you have a U.S. built yacht or boat and you send it to Europe, it gets a little complicated, but you would be subject to I think it's as much as a 25% tax over and above the VAT tax or the other taxes that would normally come into place if you were buying a boat over there. So now there's this, I guess, sort of an import tax. And it could be an additional 25%, especially if you do business over there with your EU clients. So if you take a U.S. yacht and you bring it over there and you charter it, for example, and if you charter it to Americans, you can do all that. But if you take a yacht and you go over to Europe for the summer and you want to charter it to Europeans, you're now subject to, I think, I'm not super clear on this, up to 25% tax on the value of the yacht. So there's some examples now of a 200-foot yacht worth whatever, $50 million or more.
Yeah.
So 25% tax in order to charter over there, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So boats are rerouting a little bit this year. Charter yachts are going to different places while the dust settles on all this sort of tariff.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other.
Wow, something else to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So let's see. Next question. How are marinas valued and looked at in your experience?
Well, first of all, like I said earlier, marinas weren't looked at by anybody up until about 5 or 7 years ago. Now they're looked at by everybody. I get calls constantly from all sorts of different groups that either think or do want to buy marinas. And I'm not like a marina broker, so I get calls just they want to understand the business side of it, right? So they're valued like, in a way, like you'd value any other business, except for the fact that there's waterfront property issues. So you look at the marina revenues are fairly easy to figure out. They're fairly predictable. It's like a hotel, sort of occupancy and rate. And so you can look at what the marina has and you can figure out how many slips and the average rates and your occupancy and your seasonal fluctuations, and you can sort of figure out what they're at, and then they would work out a cap rate valuation. And the marina world, depending where it's at, probably fluctuates around a 8 cap in terms of the way valuations would be made. But then you have to factor in marinas sitting on the water have a lot of capital expense that needs to be put in. So let's say a marina is full and it values well, but maybe it's falling apart. Maybe the seawalls are collapsing, maybe the docks are old. So you really have to take a hard look at the capital requirements or what the land above it might be. So some may have land, real estate value because it's on the water. Others may not. And then there's a big difference between marinas on the coast and marinas inland. So marinas on lakes would be looked at a little bit different than a marina like here on the coast.
What about hurricanes? I'm thinking marinas that are further away from the ocean are more protected in case of a hurricane, right? So does that make them be worth more money?
No, because the marinas that might be vulnerable are also maybe the most desirable marinas. So the marinas that can handle large yachts are probably right on the coast. You look at the marinas in South Florida and from Rybovich Mile Place, which is, we had an evacuation during hurricanes, but it's a great location and houses a super yacht. So hurricanes are an issue. Some marinas are protected from them, some are not. And that's a great whole topic about what you do for hurricanes and whether you evacuate here. We would evacuate this marina in a hurricane because it's vulnerable. Other marinas are attracted for hurricanes, So they, so boats here say, well, where do we go? And we say, we'll go find a marina that's more protected and run there.
Okay.
But it's not as desirable of a location because it might be up a river, harder to get to, right?
Yeah, no, and
So
there's
they don't
so
want to
many,
be there all the time.
Yeah, so
right?
many yachts that want to fit into just a few marinas.
Right.
It must be
So
complicated.
we tell them to leave, but hurry back.
Yeah.
Right? Or a boatyard, right? So
Uh-huh.
so it's the greatest sort of stress time of your life is having a boatyard when a hurricane's coming through because everybody wants to haul their boat out and you can only do so much. Everybody's your best client.
Of
Everybody's
course.
about to be your best client, and everybody you've ever talked to ever now all of a sudden is coming back to bring you business again, and you can only do so much. So it's a really it's a pretty unusual time when you're running a boatyard or marina.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about boatyards, how are boatyards valued and looked at?
So boatyards are looked at a little differently because they're harder for a lot of people to understand as well. A marina is a parking lot for boats. It's easier to understand. You get your arms around it. The model, the business is a little easier. And I've realized now that I'm doing a lot more marinas that how many moving parts a boatyard has versus a marina. It's a much easier business. But a boatyard is sort of looked at the same way. There are limited boatyards around. The boatyard's sort of the blood of the industry and or the heart of the industry, really. If you did not have a place to service boats, then the industry would have a hard time. So my big soapbox is that if the boatyard is what makes people either stay in or get out of boating. So it's not the boat, it's not the marina, it's the experience with your service yard. So if you go and it's really a hassle and it's difficult, it's complicated, more expensive than it should be. If things don't go right when you're fixing your boat, you just get annoyed. I mean, there's only so many things that are going to go wrong in your marina or your boat itself. But I've just seen people, the boatyard experience, they either say, well, that was great, you know, I love boating, and that's you know, a cost of having a boat is going and getting it worked out. But if it's a good experience, people stay in it. If it's just time and time again horrible and miserable, whether it's a super yacht or a 20-foot boat, if it's too much hassle, too difficult, too laborious, then they go buy a house in Aspen or go play golf or something.
Yeah, change hobby.
Right, change your hobby. So, well, I've been really touchy to that for 30 years, and we've tried really hard to make that good, to keep people in boating. The business side, to value them, it's kind of the same way, but it's a little harder. I mean, you'd value a boatyard based on the operational business flow and revenues and profits, and you'd put a value on some multiple of earnings based on what the yard is and where it is and what it caters to and what its capital needs are. Boatyards eat capital constantly. You're constantly putting money into the boatyard. So our boat at Rybovich in the early days, we put in the mid-90s, we put in a 300-ton travel lift, which was the biggest travel lift in the country at the time, hauling boats up to 150 feet. It was a big deal, right? In late 90s, big deal. I mean, now it's not. It's just, you know,
Boats are
that's
growing
a small
and
boatyard.
growing, yeah.
So valuing them is based on the business and your future model and the real estate there. If people value the real estate greater than the boatyard, you hope they don't, but some do.
Okay. The location, you mean?
Location, yeah. So boatyards don't trade hands as often as marinas for that reason, because boatyards are very, very labor intensive. So you need a skilled set of people to run a boatyard and all the staff. So the valuations get a little more complicated, but they're great businesses, again, because there aren't a lot of people. Nobody's opening a boatyard today. It's just like they're not opening a marina. So if you have one and it's run well, there are a few opening directors doing one in Fort Pierce. And there's some new ones coming online, but not a lot.
But are there a lot of entry barriers as in the marinas?
Yeah, I mean, maybe more because you have to find waterfront land.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a facility that it's more commercial in nature. So you're hauling boats and painting and grinding and
Yes.
some of those things. So it's a little more commercial.
Yeah.
So you've got to find land that is zoned. Your marinas are more about in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Boatyards are out of water.
Yeah.
So you need the land out of water.
Yeah.
So Marina Palms here wouldn't be able to house a boatyard because there's no land other than these counties.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So-
And residential areas would not appreciate a boatyard, right?
Not typically. I mean, it depends. It depends. A lot of the boatyards evolved just historically to where they are. So Rybovich, again, if you look at it today, it's in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
That's right.
That you wouldn't build that today,
Yeah.
but it's there and it's vibrant,
And it's
and
very
it creates
beautiful.
economic engine to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
community. But if you'd walked into that community and said, "I want to build a big, beautiful boatyard in the middle of this neighborhood," yeah, that's not going to happen.
No,
Right?
I wouldn't think so.
So it's harder to find. It's sort of harder to find places to build them.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What other business opportunities can you see in the industry as a whole? Talking about boat shows, trade groups, publications,
Podcasts,
podcasts, of course.
boat sales. What other opportunities?
Yes. That you see growing, or you see like, or maybe new and not so many people are focusing on.
And it's becoming more and more and more specialized industry. So we're getting a little more into third-party marina management, managing marinas for people who own them who don't really know how to run them. Specialized. Technology is just exponentially changing. So the technological advancements in boat building, they create opportunities where people need to change, with the times to sort of keep going. So a lot of the technological advancements are, they're really changing boating. So boating used to be for real purists who like to dig in their engine room and spend time turning wrenches and learning all about their boat. Today, people do not want that. Now that yacht or super yacht
Yeah.
with crew, maybe, but a 40-foot boat or something like that. So all these advancements now, people just want to get in and go, just like your car.
Yeah.
So people, I say this all the time, when was the last time you lifted the hood of your car engine to go see what's in there? You don't. You don't check your oil or do any of that anymore.
Yeah.
The computer on your car tells you when your oil's low or your air is low in your tires. You're not lifting the hood and checking everything at the gas station. And it's like that with boats. And the boat industry is catching up. But you still have to go in your engine room and look at things and check things, and people are just not into that so much anymore. So you're seeing a lot more outboard engine boats for smaller boats. Just a lot more technological. So I suppose if that's it's probably a huge area to get into, just the whole technological way. Painting boats, just people don't want to spend the time they used to with all those things. So you used to put your boat into service for 6 months to do a refit on a yacht. Well, now maybe you've got 3 months.
Yeah.
Yacht management companies have come up, and that's a big change. The brokerage industry has evolved too, and just the way people sell boats and buy boats and how they access them, obviously with internet and everything. So it's huge. It's a changing world, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And even the look, right? So boats like these, it's a very different, like people just like a whole different look, a whole different kind of boating lifestyle. Where people go, what people do. Yacht shared ownership is now coming on a little more than it was. Boat clubs is a bigger deal than they used to be. big ride.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing. So, how are other segments of the industry growing? For example, mega yachts, production boats, and accessory businesses. We talked about accessory businesses a bit, but how do you see like the trend in mega yachts growing, for example?
So there are more mega yachts. What's considered a mega yacht has changed, right? So used to be an arbitrary term was the definition of what's a mega yacht just keeps growing. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, 80 foot was considered a super yacht at some point, or a mega yacht. Now that wouldn't qualify. It'd be probably 150 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's all shifted a lot. The number of yachts the number of large yachts being built in the world, you know, has dramatically changed. So there's, I think, something like there were 10 years ago worldwide there were 3,000 or 4,000 mega yachts in the world. Now there's 12,000.
Wow.
And that doesn't sound like a big number to a lot of people in a way if you say there's 12,000 mega yachts, but it's a huge number.
It is.
And 80% of those, somewhere along the way, touch South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's amazing.
That's a huge number.
And what about the impact in the economy when those yachts are here?
Yeah, so I mean it's huge, right? So it's a floating city that comes to your town. And so from crew to maintenance to dockets to fuel to restaurants to shopping to everything, right? It's a huge difference. And just the physical size has changed, so it's put a lot of pressure on marinas, boatyards, and services to handle bigger boats. So, you know, so now 200 plus foot boats are coming to town pretty frequently, or to South Florida, and the number of facilities is just sort of trying to catch up to accommodate them.
Yes.
So they had the, you know, so we had back in like late, early, say 1990, we had an 86 foot Trumpy yacht, a classic wooden Trumpy yacht. And Power and Motor Yacht Magazine came out with the top 100 yachts in the U.S. the first time they did that. And ours at 86 feet was ranked like 50th, something.
Wow.
I don't remember the number, right? So today, that same ranking still comes out, and that 50th boat was like 200 feet.
Wow. That's
Right.
crazy. How many years ago was that?
Late, let me think of that, late, like 87, say.
Okay.
So call it 89 for easy math. So it's,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
30.
30 years ago. Yeah.
So 30 years ago, an 86 foot yacht would be in the top 100 of the U.S.
And now the
Now
size
it's
is more than
200.
double.
It's at
Yeah.
least double. Oh, no, it's probably triple.
More than double, yeah.
Probably triple.
Wow.
So it's
And
pretty
what does
crazy,
that
and you
mean?
just realize all the things that means.
Why do you think? Like, is it that people have more money than before to buy bigger yachts than before? Is it that just more people are interested in yachting than before? What do you think has caused this increase in the size of the yachts?
All of that, probably. I mean, well, certainly there's just a lot more money in the world, and that's fine. That's a good thing. It's a
Yeah.
great thing.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And boating and yachting, super yacht at that level is, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it is at the end of the day a way to have sort of a private way to go do what you want to do and get
Yes.
away and go where you want to go and see the world and do it in lifestyle you're into.
Yeah.
And it, in some ways, you know, it's just, I think if you've got that level of money and you can buy whatever you want, it's a great way to spend it.
Yes.
So it's also great, you know, get political here, but it's a great creator of jobs. It's
Yes.
a huge creator of jobs. So I'm a big believer in trickle down economics, which, not getting political, right? So this industry is, because if somebody's building $100 million yacht, you know, you need to realize how many jobs are created from that, you know, in every level, all over, what that really means, and how many people and companies and families and individuals are being paid to create that lifestyle for that person. So, and it's helped, the industry's fed off of it, so the whole snowball effect. So the more bigger yachts are being built, the better it is for everybody, not just the builder of the yacht, but all through it. So when one of those comes to town, so when the 86-footer came to town 30 years ago, it created a few little jobs for a few people. Now a 286-foot comes to town, and you know, it's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So you can't help but not like it. I mean, I think it's great. If people want to spend that money and they have it. So I think the lure of what's out there. Now, there aren't that many large yacht builders in the U.S. like there used to be. But a lot of the boats still come to the U.S.
We'll take it.
So that's okay, right?
We'll be prepared for them when they come.
Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, now next question. It's just what we were talking about. But how do you plan a marina's slip sizes for yachts of the future? Are marinas taking this into consideration in their, you know, construction plans and development?
So that's a great question. So marinas that are, say, 30 years old, maybe, and that's a little why you're seeing some marinas changing hands. So say a 30-year-old marina, physically the docks are ready to be replaced and they need to be changed over. But to your point, boats have changed. They're wider and longer and overall bigger, and they need more power than they've ever needed. So marinas are getting, it's slow, but they're being rebuilt to a bit of a new standard wherever you can, depending where you are, right? So marinas in Fort Lauderdale are all going through renovations to accommodate bigger boats, and in some cases for super yachts, in other cases just for, you know, normal big boats. I mean, this marina came online somewhat adapting, was a bright line.
Yeah.
Somewhat adapting to bigger and wider boats, but the newer ones are definitely bigger and they require a different marina configuration. So it's not that easy to do. So if you rebuild a marina today, you still need to go through a big, laborious permit process. It takes a long time. But in some cases, actually in a lot of cases, in a coastal marina, you may come back with less slips, but bigger, wider slips. So let's say you had a 100-slip marina and it's 30 years old and it needs to be rebuilt and the boats have changed and everything. You may come back and you may use the same footprint, but maybe you build 85 slips, but they all hold bigger boats, better power, wider power. So the model is still better.
Yeah.
Measured in lineal feet. But the same thing is going on in dry storage buildings. So dry stack buildings all over the place. Same exact issue, maybe even a bigger issue. So dry stack buildings were built, anything that's 20 some years or older, they are, the demand is for bigger boats and wider boats and triple and quad engine outboards instead of single and twin engine outboards. So if you look in old dry stack buildings, they may not be that full, but the demand is there, but they can't physically fit.
The boat there, yeah.
So you're seeing some changeover of that too.
Wow.
On engine manufacturers, like an outboard, so Yamaha or Mercury, so, you know, 7 years ago, having 3 engines on a small boat was sort of unique. Now they're all triple and quad engines. So the engine manufacturers have scrambled to catch up. So all of a sudden their market's up, 50%.
Wow, yeah. That's a good business to be in.
That's a great business to be in. So we just got into that in our boatyard in Alabama. So the market, we entered the outboard market. We do a lot of engine work, but we entered the outboard market, which a lot of people are doing, because all of a sudden, now we're getting, you used to think of outboards as just small 25-foot boats, and there wasn't much to do on them. Now they're 40, 50-foot boats with 4 or 5 engines on the back and all the things that go into it. So from a boatyard point of view, that's a great client to us.
Wow, yeah.
We changed our sort of business model and said, well, it's okay to get into outboard boats.
Sure, why not?
They're big boats.
Why not? Nice. Okay, and what are the environmental boatyard challenges for the near and long term?
So that's a huge issue and always has been and probably always will be. So the old days when people weren't paying attention to anything in particular, you grind a boat, you spray paint boats, nobody cared about anything, throw your oil in the dirt. I mean, right, so that world's gone and changed. So the environmental pressure is huge to continue to sort of just do the right thing. There's sort of this fallacy that boatyards and marinas are not environmentally sensitive, or that boaters aren't generally, they're the polluters. But it's sort of the opposite, because we in the industry, we're the ones that use the waters.
Yeah.
So if the waters are nasty and dirty, then we'll all lose our customers. Who's going to go play in the water or be around if it's nasty? So we all have this inherent belief that we should do the right thing anyways, just to keep it vibrant, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of pressure it's hard to do. So if you're taking a large yacht to paint it, let's say, there may not be facilities to haul the big yacht out of the water and paint it. So there are ways now you can encapsulate a boat in the water and put in all the proper environmental protections, and you can do your work and contain everything and keep it very environmentally contained. I mean, just the way yards are built today or renovated from the ground, and the way you contain your water, pressure wash water, grinding with dustless. Boatyards are not the dirty thing that people think they are today. People are more aware of what they're doing. Use dustless sanding equipment that collects as you go, or paint using, the old days where paint fumes were just billowing in the air and everybody was walking around, and that's sort of not how it is these days. It is in little pockets, but not sort of a full-blown yard that's been around. So the pressure is there to keep doing that. Again, technology is a great business opportunity, because there's a lot of technology out there to make life better for boatyards and repair work, how you fix things, and engines, and again, as things get more technological, it's continuing to be a different situation. Changing an oil on a boat, today with systems that are on there, you hit a couple levers and it changes the oil in a nice self-contained thing, and you're not in there spilling oil all over the place. That world's changed, in a good way.
Yeah.
There's been a huge growth in yacht management companies, and that's a whole sort of new market in the last 10 plus years anyway. So yacht management, so an owner may or may not rely on his captain to do that. Captain may or may not be good at that, right? So you can get a yacht management company and you say, well, I need to paint my boat and redo my engine and add a cabinet and a galley or whatever it is you're doing. And yacht management companies could resource all that and do that. Or the captain may have the ability to do that and manage it. But then it gets a little complicated, because if you're managing your own project, you have to be able to coordinate things and be painting my boat when my guy is in there sawing the cabinet open, and some people understand how to manage that and others don't. So owners themselves don't at all do it.
And
I
they
mean,
don't
maybe
want
very,
to,
very small
right?
percent.
It's too much stress.
Right. I mean,
People have
some do, but not hardly any would do it. And the billing and the coordination of you know, how do you know you're getting a good price, and is this guy a legitimate vendor, and is he in somebody's pocket? And there's all those sorts of things that still sort of exist out there, and so you need to find people that you know that know what's right and wrong, do it the right way, get taken by somebody.
So would you recommend hiring a professional yacht management company that you can trust?
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
what, like, the best way to go?
I mean, a lot of, at the larger yachting, a lot of yacht management companies manage the crew and the whole boat. They manage everything. You know, they hire the captain. They do everything. Some captains like that. Some captains are offended by that. You know, I don't need someone to tell me how to run my boat. So you got to find that right balance. But yeah, I mean, now that's more common than not. I mean, 100+ foot boat. That's the norm. That you would have a yacht management company manage your boat for you, deal with insurance and pay the bills and dockets and maintenance and pay the crew and manage the crew. And if you've got a bigger yacht where you've got a number of crew, there's turnover and managing crew is as big of an issue. And then so in some cases, you see some owners who downsize their boat because they just don't want the hassle. Not that they can't afford it, but they go, I just don't want a crew of 12.
Yeah,
I'm always worrying
lot
about
of
when I get on the boat, I don't even know who I'm going to go on there anymore. I don't want them all running around and all the personnel issues with people, getting them on or not getting them on. So there's a little bit of a shift where some owners just don't want that. But so the compromise is you just let a company manage that whole process for you. But it makes it's definitely made the industry much less personable than it used to be. I mean, I was with somebody last week at that USSA summit, and they were talking about how, you're always dealing with owners directly on everything. In a boat yard in particular, you're calling up, you're talking to the owner directly about what's going on and working with him and his captain. It was a very sort of relationship sort of thing. Now, I mean, very little owner interaction. And so it takes a little bit of personal.
Yeah, depending also on the size of the yacht.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But that, people's time is far more precious than it used to be. Just the world moves way faster, right? So we all don't have enough time anymore to do whatever it is we all do.
But it's an advantage too, in the sense that the yacht owner doesn't have to think about that, and he can just go and enjoy the yacht.
And that's the point, yeah. Because it's supposed to be all about fun. Right? It's not supposed to be a big stress. And running a big boat is a business at the end of the day. If you've got a $20 million yacht or something like that, got a couple $1 million a year of expenses running through it. It's a small business that you've got to deal with and all the hassles and stress. So if you can have somebody else do that, run your business, and then you just get out and have fun. Which at the end of the day is what it should be. It's supposed to be fun.
Yes, and that's why so many people are into yachts, because it is fun.
It's supposed to be. I love it. Well, what has changed, I tell you what has changed, is tides. I feel like they have anyway. So we're getting way more extreme tides than I feel like we've had before, and maybe in a big picture in the world, maybe that's part of it. So you get these king tides and things that really are dramatic tidal shifts. So it's not as much of a boatyard issue, it's definitely a marina issue. So some marinas now, if they're on fixed docks and those king tides really come up, and now you see some docks now are underwater at certain times. So there is a bit of a greater focus on building for sort of today's marinas. You build for that sort of 100-year storm, 100-year. You're not really building for sea level change, but you are building for 100-year storms.
Mm-hmm.
Very sort of statistically, and you say, okay, statistically, every 100 years we're going to have some sort of storm surge or tidal surge that's going to change the levels by, X number of feet.
Okay.
So you'll see pilings that are built higher up, or a fixed dock that may be higher than normal for that 100-year deal. I'm going through that I'm working on a project for the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut. They're rebuilding their marine and boatyard, and that's a big topic. It's a 100-year, 150-year. It's all Coast Guard sort of government way of looking at things. So they're very much looking at that. But it's more about the extreme storm level than the shift in ocean level.
Okay, so it's not something that marinas are really actively considering.
No, I mean they are when they rebuild, definitely considering a 100-year storm
Okay.
surge, for sure. That's on the checklist of things you look at. If I'm building a new marina, what could happen in a hurricane, and what's kind of that 100-year statistical event that might occur.
Okay.
So you would build a marina to that standard. A boatyard. Maybe not so much.
Because it's on the land, right? So they
Right.
don't have to worry so much.
Right.
Last question, and then you're free. Do you have any advice for yacht owners that might be thinking about investing in the marine industry?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them do. They can call me and we'll chat about it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them do. And as we said at the beginning, as long as they go into it understanding the nuances of it and understanding it's a business at the end of the day, and just looking at it objectively like a real business and what it can do. And some may not care if it makes money, maybe. I mean, I know some very, very large end that bought large marinas because they just needed a place for their large boat and they didn't so much care. And that's great, that's okay. It throws the balance off a little bit. But it's a great industry, and it's so many parts of it too. So people say I want to buy in the marine industry, and they have to sort of narrow that down. Marina, boatyard, boat building,
technology, right?
support products. You have to sort of say what is it you're interested in. But yeah, I think the more the merrier.
Yes. So if people want to contact you, Jim, the best way is by email, by phone. How would you prefer people to reach you?
I mean, either email. I have a couple emails. The easy one to remember is bronboat@yahoo.com. BRONBOAT.
BRONBOAT@yahoo.com.
It's probably the easiest.
Okay, so I will have that in the episode notes as well for anyone who wants to ask
Or
a
phone,
question.
or any way.
Okay, I'll have your
I can
phone
be
there.
found.
Okay.
Somehow you found me.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for all the valuable information you shared with us today, and we'll see each other again soon.
My pleasure. It's great.